Discover the Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast, hosted by Tiffany, Benitez, and Jordan Franklin. Here, the complexities of being a woman in the tech industry are unraveled through discussions on key issues, personal growth, and how to succeed despite systematic challenges. It's a source of empowerment and inspiration for all women at all stages of their tech careers. We are so excited to be here today. I am Tiffany Benitez, here with my co-host, Jordan Franklin. We are excited to join you today, and we have brought you Tracy Henry. So excited to kind of intro and let her come in and talk about an amazing topic that she has on her heart. So Tracy is an Arkansas native who is passionate and purposeful about balance. Okay, we talk about this a lot, so just excited already. Personal growth and whole health across mind, body, and spirit. She's an advocate for inclusion and equity for all, personal choice, and self-love, along with self-care. She's a wife, a mother of 2 daughters, 1 stepdaughter, and a stepson, ranging from ages 14 to 24. That's a fun age range, I would say. And over the years, she's balanced and rebounded from the ups and downs of life, including divorce from an 11-year marriage, single motherhood for 6 years during her daughter's early years, also while building her career. Wow, Tracy. And losing her mother to Alzheimer's. Sorry to hear that. Maintaining strong friendships and opening her heart to the dating world, which is not for the faint of heart. Amen from my friends that are dating right now. Remarrying and blending families, and now being what she calls a half-empty nester with only 1 minor child still under her roof. Her favorite ways to spend her time is being outdoors, reading, empowering and thought-provoking books, laughing and having fun with her family and friends. Professionally, she's a U of A graduate with a degree in marketing and a 20-plus year career in the Walmart world. She has held several business roles inside and outside of Walmart and Sam's Club as an associate, and also outside of Walmart as a vendor partner, primarily in the financial services space. So she brings all of her passions in her work and her life together through being her authentic self in her role at Sam's Club and championing belonging and inclusion. Speaking of being our authentic selves, today has been craziness, but super excited to be here. Okay, she's an ambassador at the Walmart Live and Lead program, and developed and co-leads an empowerment circle at Walmart that fosters professional and personal growth through whole health, mindful, and well-being experiences that are infused with Walmart culture and values. That was an amazing bio, a mouthful, but that just shows how incredible you are. So we are excited to have you here today, Tracy.
So excited.
Thank you. Me too. This is awesome. I really appreciate it.
Well, okay, so I always kick off the podcast with our purpose, and the purpose of our podcast is to really dig in and talk about topics that matter to girls and women, not only in technology, but just in general, right? And bring awareness to those topics and kind of release our authentic self across the space, right? So our first question is always, what does authenticity mean to you?
Yeah. Honestly, it's a pretty simple answer. For me, it is just following my peace. And what I mean by that is just leaning into decisions and choices and experiences and people in my life that bring me more peace than anxiety. And it's that simple. It's not always that easy to decipher, but when I'm intentional and I'm paying attention, I can start to tell the difference and make decisions appropriately as needed. So for me, it's literally following my peace.
I love that. You're so right, though. That is way harder than saying, hey, this is what makes me peaceful, and that's what I'm going to do. But it is an intentional choice every single time.
It is. And I would say, so we actually were talking about this before we got on the episode, and we were talking about the fact that no matter what your title is, wherever you work, that tech really touches everything. And so talk to us a little bit about how you've really been able to develop that over your career journey. And I'm assuming that your career had a part to play in why you now opt out from certain things. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my career path has definitely been one role and one relationship and one connection leading to the next, very organically and naturally. And looking back, I'm grateful for that because I feel like I have been able to follow my peace without even realizing I was doing that. And, I have been on inside Walmart and Sam's Club and outside as a vendor in the Walmart world pretty much all of my career. And that's allowed me to see it from different perspectives and really figure out what does feed my soul. What am I good at? What do I enjoy doing? And what do I want to lean more into, which brings me more peace in my everyday life. And so for me, that's worked out really well. And, across my entire career span, balance has always been a top priority. And especially as a single working mother, I was, the CEO of our lives and our calendar. And so balance was an absolute necessity for my own sanity and the sake of my girls. And so it naturally has bubbled up as a top priority for me. And I'm grateful that I was able to recognize that and then continue to prioritize that across my career so that I can balance the demands of work and home in a way that feels peaceful to me. Not that every moment does, but if the majority of the time nets out to a more peaceful, balanced way of functioning, then I call that a win. And so for me, that's really been a top priority across my career and continues to be.
Yeah, so I was actually having this conversation. I mean, kudos to all those single moms out there. Like, I was having this conversation with one of my dear friends earlier, and I was like, I don't know that I could even do it. Like, you really do have to like say what's important to you and then each child, because you get to that. I mean, I think moms that have help get there later, and the moms that are single are like, this is what we're doing, you get one sport, like, or whatever that decision is for that family. But while I was talking to her, I was like, I don't know I could do it. She has been helping with the hurricanes, and so he'd been gone for 3 weeks, and she was like, I just did it for 3 weeks, never want to do it again. So that's huge, I think. I will say, so in every role in IT, in everything, we as a womanhood, right, kind of see ourselves, not necessarily do we see ourselves as the minority, but a lot of the times we are in whatever industry we're in, right? Especially in IT. That being said, you said that your career has been organic and growing and everything like that. Do you find at any point in time that you were plagued by gender bias or any hurdles that you had to get over? Obviously, being a single mom, that's a big one. But what would you say your career journey was like in that kind of sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I too am in a predominantly male dominated area of financial services, but I think over time that has continued to shift, and having marketing components to my role sometimes kind of breaks out of that to a degree. So I understand the experience of that, but I think for me, having genuinely been my authentic self throughout my career as best as possible has kind of helped me relax into the relationships, whether it was with men or females, and just navigate it in a natural way that was true and honest within myself, and take it or leave it, take what you like and leave the rest mentality. Like, it applies to others and how they receive me, and it applies to how I receive others and experiences in life. And I think just being able to have that mindset and realize, you're not going to be for everyone necessarily. But if I come in and I do the best I can each day, and I try to excel in my role and lean into my strengths and play into my strengths instead of trying to compensate and pull a weakness into a strength, that's a distraction in my opinion. And if I lean into my strengths, that's where I bring value. And, luckily that served me pretty well. And I think trying to be something I'm not would have held me back and probably created more problems than I personally have experienced. But I do think it's important to, as a single mom, going back to that, I was transparent about the demands of that. I didn't try to pretend like that wasn't a reality for me. It wasn't a hurdle, or it wasn't like a handicap, it wasn't a weakness. It was just a reality. And I think there's a difference that sometimes probably women, for the most part, feel like we have to kind of keep our private lives and those demands a little bit tucked in so that we're not perceived as not being capable. And so for me, it's like I have really intentionally tried to balance my schedule and my calendar and my work meetings so that neither were sacrificed, and if you work efficiently, you can pack quite a bit in a compact time and still be able to make those early evening parental obligations or those, drop offs in the morning that require a little extra time. Like, to me, that's where the balance comes in, and being transparent and authentic about that. Most people understand that. And whenever I've experienced any sort of challenge around it, I knew that was more of a reflection on their lack of understanding and education on the topic, but it hasn't ever been too big of a deal because I think I approached it forward, and transparently up front.
Yeah, I think the way you said that, that's a lack on them not understanding. It's not really a reflection on what I need to be doing.
Yeah.
I love the way you said that.
I really like that too. I think the sucky part though is that if someone is a single dad, they don't have to explain their schedule, right? So there is a very real thing like, oh, I need to travel. Okay, I've been asked by male leaders, well, is someone going to take care of your kids? I mean, did you ask my male counterpart that? I mean, so there are some very real things regardless of what industry that you work in. But I think you drive a good point of like, I think how you handle that and how you perceive that, and that's not going to impact you being able to balance your schedule and to be transparent. They can take it or leave it, right? I also, one of my favorite things that you said that is really what I live by is that you're not everybody's cup of tea. You said that in a different way, but that's okay. I think that we as women get really defeated when people don't like us or we're not their cup of tea. I feel like I had to get into like my 40s to be like, who gives a crap? Like, I'm going to still show up as my whole authentic self. And if you don't like me, that's okay. Doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make me a bad person, right? It just probably means we won't like be at the same table all the time. And that's okay, right? So finding a respect for each other and just allowing us to be different and to embrace that and be okay with that instead of like consistently like striving to please people is huge. So I really love that. But this topic that we're talking about today is, I actually want to get into the meat of that. I think it's something that we as women struggle with. So we just talked about like not being like people's cup of tea. And I think opting out to what doesn't serve you anymore, whether that's a relationship or a multitude of other things, is something that you're really passionate about. And I would say for many of us, that's a struggle sometimes. Like, what do we actually opt out of? Like, what do we need to feel obligated to? And so I'd like to know from you, like, what does that opting out to what no longer serves you, like, what do you define that as? Like, I know this is huge for you. It's something you live by. So talk to us a little bit about what that means for you.
Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, Women in Technology of Northwest Arkansas and Gumption at my-gumption.com for their support. Their contributions are critical in bringing these meaningful conversations to you. Stick around for more engaging discussions right after this break.
Yeah, it kind of ties into what I said earlier about authenticity. And for me, the barometer is what brings me peace, what fills my cup, what energizes me, what's fulfilling versus what is a drain, what is depleting, whether it be time, energy, or even our wallets. We can waste a lot of time and money doing things across our lives that we don't really get any value from. They're not serving us, but maybe we're doing it out of habit. It was the way we were raised. It's what we think society expects of us, or whatever we have manufactured as to why we do it, or we don't even think about it. We're just doing it. We're running through the motions. But if you stop and think about how you're spending your time and how that aligns with your priorities and values, you can really start to see what you might be out of whack or out of balance. And so for me, like, an easy way to help kind of bring this to life is if you think of like a pie chart representing all your priorities and your values. Most of us would say family is a top priority, and our career, and various things that we see as like our top priority and that best represent our values. Well, if you do that same exercise with that pie chart around how we actually spend our time on those categories, if you're really honest about it, you may find that there's an area that you say is a huge priority, but yet gets a much smaller amount of your time. And that's not on you like, oh, you're doing this bad or poorly. It's that you're just not really aligning your time with your priorities consciously. And then it's about figuring out little ways throughout your day that maybe you can reduce things, opt out altogether, outsource them, do them differently so that it frees up time. And that can be as small as, minor inconveniences. For me, a great example was when I stopped and thought about how much time over my life I was spending drying and blow drying and styling my hair after washing it. And it was a drain and it was kind of bogging me down. And I had to get up earlier to have time to do it. And just started to become one of those things that I was like, why am I doing this so frequently? And I realized that I didn't actually have to do it so frequently. That was the choice. And so I made these incremental changes, not that big of a deal, not life changing for anybody other than me. And no one else noticed, but it was like a way that I could choose to spend my time differently, whether I want to be sleeping or reading or doing whatever I want. It was my choice to consciously decide how I want to invest my time, or it could be much more significant, opting out of a bad relationship or a job that is sucking the soul out of you, and, or any number of things, social media, beauty regimens, anything that's not serving you. That's where we can say, you know what, I have a choice. I don't have to do all these things. Just because the news is bombarding me doesn't mean I have to watch it and listen. I can opt out. So I think for me, it was really just starting to apply that in as many areas as possible, so it would start to add up. And I have then the time and the ability to choose how I actually want to spend that time and energy and that money in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, so I was actually reading a book about like an 80-20 rule. Like you keep the 80 and you piece off the 20, right? Like, and you keep doing that until you get to like your core of what you really want. And that could be anything, right? Some people who have the luxury of not reading emails piece that off to somebody else, and somebody else can be really good at that. But you're not good at everything, right? Like you've got to realize what you're good at and what serves your soul, and keep the things that serve your soul and piece off to somebody else the things that don't serve your soul and might serve theirs, right? And then they keep doing it. And that's the way you get fully functional teams, is so that they're keeping the things they're really good at, serves their soul, they're invested in it, and then you're doing the same, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to add, another point about it is that everything that I say no to, that I choose to opt out of, allows me the ability to say yes to the things that matter the most, that fill my cup, that align with my values. And I committed to myself years ago to live what I call a hell yes life. And that's where I am more interested in opting into the things that support me and serve me. And that means I'm going to need to opt out of a few things to allow that space and capacity for
Yeah.
You said something that a few minutes ago about really understanding what your priorities are. And so I have this exercise that a mentor did with me a long time ago, and I do this exercise with every person that I mentor now. And I say, for every season, because seasons look different. Like this season is going to look completely different than maybe your season in a year or 2 years, whatever that looks like for you. But for the season you're in, pick your top 3 things. Like more than 3 starts to get crazy and chaotic. So pick your top 3 things, whatever those are for you, and covet those 3 things. Like for this season, anything outside of these 3 things are a no for me. And then doing an exercise of write down everything that you did for the past 2 to 3 days, right? Or maybe even give it a week. And then see how many of those things actually align to those top 3 and don't. And it helps you also see, again, back to how you're prioritizing your time. Like, what do I need to take out and start saying no to? Because remember, these are my 3. And for me, that's been helpful. I have to see it sometimes, like writing it down and actually looking at it, or writing down, these are my top 3 and sticking it on a sticky somewhere so I can remember when people ask me, can you do this and that? Well, if it doesn't align with my top 3, the answer is no.
I love that.
That's really hard for me to do. Just if you want to know.
Well, I would throw out that so is the alternative. The things that are hard are really often just different than what we're accustomed to. But giving my time and energy to things that aren't serving me is really hard as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the more we say no, the better we are at the things we said yes to. And then we actually get offered, that almost makes that seat at the table for us and those things that we've said yes to because we're devoting our time to it, right? And when you sit there and think about it like that, like I want people to know that I kick butt in everything I do, right? But if I say yes to everything, then I can't kick butt in anything.
Right.
And that's kind of how I see it. It's like sometimes I don't like saying no, but I know I need to in order to be my full self somewhere else or fully vested in something else. Kind of like that 3 rule, right?
Absolutely.
So, kind of starting to wrap up things, what would you say are some great support networks? What have you used, through your journey that maybe, would help us slow down and balance and that kind of stuff, but are really intentional?
Yeah, thinking through just my personal way of approaching finding out what does feed my soul and keeping myself evolving and moving forward has been a very organic process of just kind of one-on-one personal connections. When I'm drawn to someone, like how I met Tiffany, is a prime example. But when I'm drawn to someone who's doing something that's inspiring to me, maybe in a space that I'm interested in, but not super familiar with, or just I can tell is really just, doing big things out in the world or doing things that seem very interesting to me, then I will kind of like cold call, reach out to people and ask if they're up for a quick, Zoom chat or coffee meetup type thing so that I can just get to know them more. So it's kind of like a sales cold calling, but it's more of like a networking, personal development process for me. And it's an easy way to kind of get to know each other on a one-on-one level. And usually I come out of those conversations like so pumped up. I'm turned on to a new podcast or a book or a new event that I might be interested in. And then oftentimes that connection leads to another connection. And so I'm building this network of like these really impressive people that are doing things that are naturally interesting to me. So it's also kind of like following my piece. I'm following my interests. So I'm not trying to force myself to network in a business area, for example, that I'm not personally that held to learn more about. So I think for me, it's been very valuable to like lean into those natural connections and put myself out there because I really don't ever get to get turned down. People are very receptive to those quick, easy ways of connecting. And hopefully it's a compliment to them that I, want to learn more from them and about them. And then trying to just do that, naturally of giving it back to others who are inclined to do the same. It's a very rewarding way to continue to evolve for me.
Yeah.
I love it. Being proactive, I think, is so underrated sometimes. Like we don't ask the person or, we make assumptions. We see this a lot. Like a lot of people tell me like, I really wanted to reach out, but I know you're busy. Well, if you know me, the one thing that you know about me is that yes, I am always busy, but I am here for people. Like people are my thing. It's what drives me. And I will no task will ever make me too busy for people. And so just ask. And the answer might be no, or maybe this isn't a good time for them, but do you know if you don't really reach out and ask? And I think we could definitely do more as far as that goes. So the final question we typically ask every single guest is like, if you had to give our audience, so all of our amazing listeners tuning in today, if you had to leave them with one final piece of advice, what would that be?
Well, I think I'll stay on theme. And I would recommend that you follow your peace and that you create your version of a hell yes life by consciously choosing what you opt into, what you opt out.
I love that. I love that. So follow your
live our hell yes life. Yes, that's what we're going to do. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today. And like I always say, please subscribe and follow us on all forms of social. Tiffany, you want to take us out?
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Tracy, for being on the show. Thank you for our listeners for continuously listening, tuning in, subscribing, and following and sharing. So if you could continue to do that, and as we typically always do at the end of this, you will see Tracy's socials pop across the screen. So go out and follow her. I would like to learn more. I'm actually going to set up some time, Tracy, to kind of opt in to learning more about how it's okay to really say no. And again, I feel like I'm getting better at it, but it's still a struggle, I think, for all of us of like, which thing do we say yes to? There's a lot of amazing things. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, that's a wrap. Another episode of Women in Tech Trailblazers podcast. Thanks for tuning in and sharing this time with us. If you liked what you heard, please share this episode with your friends in tech. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Your support helps us keep bringing in inspiring guests and uncovering topics that matter to you. Until next time, keep pushing boundaries and making your mark in the tech world. Goodbye for now.